Hello and welcome to the Grueling Truth. This is the Indy 500 qualifying preview. Before we get started with our 500 qualifying preview, I want to remind you that the Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding an online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Steve, Indy 500 qualifying this week. We're going to have to revert to you a lot on this show tonight with your expertise. I do follow IndyCar. I watch it when I can. I watch the Indy 500 every year, but you are the man when it comes to IndyCar here at the Grueling Truth. So why don't you?
I wouldn't say I'm the man, but I'm was born and raised in Indy. I was going to the track by myself with my buddies when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and for probably a 20-year stretch, 10-year stretch, 50, somewhere between there. Probably closer to 15 to 20 years. I never missed a race, and I don't think I saw the race for the first 10 years I went. We went to the amazing infield, and when you go to the infield back in those days when the snake pit existed, and there was a little different atmosphere in the infield, you didn't spend a lot of time watching cars when you were young and impressionable.
Go ahead.
I've been
to a couple brickyards. And
oh, no, not even the brickyards. You don't know anything unless you're 63 years old and you went to the Indy 500 when you were 12 or 13.
Oh, I guarantee
you have to put that age gap in between you before you get the full appreciation of what the infield was in the good old days. The tradition died when they killed Snake Pit.
I'll tell you
this, anyway, Steve, go ahead.
I do know for a fact, though, that if you party a little too hard the night before any one of those races, those greens inside the racetrack are awfully comfortable.
Yeah, they are. And I'm going to tell you what, I remember walking around because we used to get in line the night before and park on 16th Street. And you had to go down 16th Street and you'd sit there. And the line back from the track was some 4, 5, 6, 7 miles long to get into the infield and park. So depending on how early you want to get there, you started lining up on West 16th. And just sat there and you just slept in your car. You partied all night. You went in and they just herded you into one of the lots in the infield and you parked and you just got out of the car, locked your car up and started walking around. And I remember, I can't count the number of people by 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, you'd walk around and they were so red from passing out, laying on the grass with jeans and no t-shirt on that they were just spread out, laid out, hands out, face down or face up. And the ambulances in golf carts, they would get the golf cart ambulances out and they would just haul these people to the care center. And they had to go because they were blistering. So, but those were the good old days. Now it's a lot more refined. They no longer have camping. They now have what's called glamping, where you rent a tent. It has power in it, a big screen TV, air conditioning, a cooler, and they're parked into turn 4. You go down there to the glamping area. They have chefs and people that come and cook for you. So like the rest of the world, modernization has stepped in. But to tie a little bit to start the show off, tie a little bit to our sponsor, bless their hearts, betting.net. You know, auto racing is a very tough sport to bet on to begin with because there are so many factors involved in the sport. Equipment, other idiots on the track, conditions on the track, so many parts in the car that can break down and cause somebody. I mean, how many times did Mario Andretti leading the Indy 500 did we hear, Andretti is slowing down?
Yeah.
And this is with less than 10 laps, 5 laps to go. Andretti is slowing down. So much to do. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to bet racing and you want to have fun at it, okay, forget about F1. I know we do a show about betting on F1, but there are 4 cars that have any chance to win in F1. And any one of those 4 cars, if you bet on them, you're going to win maybe 10, 20 cents on the dollar is all you're going to get because everybody knows nobody can beat those 4 cars. Right now, it's the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. And so don't waste your time. But I'm going to tell you right now, after today's practice, if you want to have fun betting, bet on this Indy 500 because there are probably right now, after watching, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 drivers that can win this race. And I'll start off with this. There were 16 cars today that topped the 230 mile an hour speed clip. Now, up until then, the best speed all the week before that had been in the high 227s. Okay. Now, what they did yesterday was they make you kind of restrict a little bit the early part of the week because they don't want guys going out and getting overboard on speed before they kind of get used to the track and everything like that. And they restricted. Now today they added 90 more horsepower to the Hondas and the Chevrolets that are powering these cars, and they let you reduce your downforce. Now
So
you
what
reduce
is the
downforce, obviously we know what that means. That means the cars are a lot more vulnerable to difficult conditions or your driving, because more downforce, the more the car stays tight to the ground and does not. It's much more forgiving. It's kind of like hitting a perimeter weighted iron versus a blade in golf. Okay, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm not even sure of this because I don't keep up with it too much. But what is the total? Do you know what the total allowable horsepower is for IndyCar during the 500?
It's been so long since I've checked that, but I believe it's probably around 700 to 800 horsepower. I'm guessing. And don't hold me to that. I believe the engines are normally aspirated now. I don't think they have turbochargers on them anymore either.
Okay.
And that's something I should know, and I apologize. I can look that
Yeah,
up quickly, but I think it's a normally aspirated
sure.
engine done by either Honda or Chevrolet. But they released, it allowed you to up your horsepower by 90 horsepower. And I'm sure they checked that all through tech and everything on a dyno real quick as you're running through tech inspection. But that's a lot of speed. I mean, that's enough to bump you. I'll tell you what, the conditions today were awful. The winds were probably a constant 20 to 25 miles an hour in Indianapolis, or storms rolling through the area. It was blue skies there today. I know there's a 70% chance of rain and thunderstorms in Indianapolis tomorrow. I don't know what it's like where you live down in southern Indiana, but I know you guys had rain the day before.
Yeah, we got big storms.
Indy was threatened. Well, Indy was washed out on Tuesday because of thunderstorms all day long. So that's just the month of May in Indianapolis. May showers bring June flowers. How many times have we heard that? But the cars were buffeting. The cars were buffed. You never heard that? That's actually April showers bring May flowers.
Showers bring May flowers. That's what
I'm elaborating. Okay, I'm embellishing a little bit on it. May flowers. May showers bring June flowers. Out here in California, we just grow flowers year round.
And everything's rainbows and unicorns.
Geraniums stay blossoming year round. We don't have to dig up geraniums in the fall, plant mums, and then come out and plant new geraniums like you do in Indianapolis. That's the one saving grace. We just plant geraniums and they stay and they grow. And my wife has geraniums as big as I am, and I'm big in every way, shape, or form. So anyway, back to it. So yes. it was treacherous conditions today, and they opened up the horsepower, and they let you lay off the downforce a little bit, let you adjust your wings. They gave you more tolerance in the wings, and the fins up front, so you got more horsepower, which means automatically more speed. And like I said, the top speed all week had been 227 by Tacoma Sato, I believe it was, and Scott Dixon had been on top. Today, Alexander Rossi goes out and pumps at 231 as soon as he puts his car on the track. And this morning or this afternoon at noon your time, 9 o'clock my time. So now people are saying, where do you see all this? I'll tell you right now, if you want to watch the ancillary stuff, Peacock, if you have streaming service with you, Peacock carries all the Indy 500 stuff live all week long. I've been able to watch it on Peacock. This is no plug for Peacock, but if you're into betting it and you want to know the details and know what makes you a smart bet and look at how people are driving, you go to Peacock. You can watch practice all day long, every day, and you get a good idea of where to place your money if you want to bet it. And of course,
also Peacock,
what site to go to would be betting.net. They will tell you where to go spend your money and make your money back and make more money. So yeah, they opened it up today. Now, we had our first incident with the wall today. Actually, I was shocked all week long. And I'll tell you why I was shocked, because we have a lot of rookies this year, a lot of guys that have not driven at Indy before. And we have a lot of one-time drivers who coming back this year. Tony Kanaan, past champion, but has not driven a race car since Indy 500 last year. Marco Andretti is making a return. He hasn't driven a car, I believe, since Indy last year.
What were their
Juan
times
Pablo
like today?
I'll get to the times here real quick. They both were fast. Tony Kanaan finished 8th, topping off at a 2:31.392, and Marco Andretti was 18th, coming in at 2:29. In a Andretti powered Honda. So he was in a Honda, and so and Honda power seems to be the engine of choice. We'll get to that right now for speed. Jimmy Johnson actually making he's been in the IndyCar for a couple of years now, but this is his first Indy 500. And I'm going to tell you what, he's the snot out of me. Sorry for not having a better word to use, but Jimmy's been on top of the speed charts a lot. He finished 17th today with a 2:29.929, and he had the second best 4-lap average of anybody, second only to Takuma Sato, who I believe Tony Kanaan had the best 4-lap average. I'm sorry, and Tony Kanaan and Takuma Sato was third. Now, the 4-lap average is what you want to dig up and find, because that tells you what the qualifying speed is. Okay, the single lap stuff is kind of like drive for show, putt for dough. In the old golf term, it's always drive for show, hit a big drive, hit it 300 yards down there. But then if you 3-putt, what's the point? This is kind of the way. You can go out and run a 2:31 lap, but the key, what I was looking for today, was drivers that could sustain their 4-lap averages. And like I said, Tony Kanaan ran out and ran a 2:30 average for 4 laps, and nobody was able to get better than that. So that automatically makes him a favorite for the pole. Or, and there will be more than one favorite. We'll get into that here in a few minutes. So he's a favorite. Jimmy Johnson, if he can put it together, he ran consistent times. You want to find out what their lap times are and what the fall off is over those laps, because the tires get hotter, they get more slick. You start to lose a little bit of grip on those cars, and you're running with the least amount of downforce you can get by with without and not putting the car, because those back ends will jump out on you like there's no tomorrow. You think a NASCAR can do it? What do you see these Indy cars? That rear end will just snap. They have to teach drivers how to get into the pits, because if you just let off the throttle, the car will. If you just say, "Okay, I've made my run, I'm just going to coast in at 230 miles an hour. I can coast 2.5 miles." You just pull off the throttle entirely and take your foot off of it. The back end will come flying around. You have to slowly pull that foot off that pedal and take about halfway around that track to decelerate before you yank your foot off. That's how sensitive those cars are to that. So, but today was a really fun, great day. The weather played the dickens. I think we would have seen 233s, 234s, because they were getting 240s on the backstretch. They were measuring backstretch time, and a lot of drivers were coming out of turn 1 at about 220, 221 on their hot laps. Heading down the backstretch, they'd kick it up to mid or low to mid 240s, depending on how much power they were getting. And they would cruise through turn 3 and 4 at high 220s, right at 230. And that gives you, just when you get halfway through turn 4, you pump on the gas and you head for the bricks, the yard of bricks, and you complete your run. So, but we saw a lot of 1-lap times. A lot of guys didn't want to fight the win. Some guys like the Andretti cars, a lot of them, the Penske cars in particular, they were done like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, practice goes till 6 o'clock. So they basically said, look, the wind's treacherous. We're where we want to be with our cars. And if I look at the chart here, I don't see an Andretti car, well, or a Penske car. Where's Scott? Where's oh man, I tell you what. Well, I'll have to go back in and find. Will Power was 12th. He's a Newgarden was 11th or 10th. Yeah, I'm sorry. Power was 11th. Newgarden was 12th. So and they've got one more driver here. I'll find him here in a minute. But they were pleased with that come qualifying. Now a lot of drivers stayed out and said, "Look, we're going to practice as much as we can in this weather because in this wind, this is what it might be like tomorrow." You know, we may get on the track first thing at noon and decide we're going because we see rain coming hard, and we're going to go ahead and qualify right now and get a time posted, and we're going to fight these same winds tomorrow before the storm comes in as we're fighting today. So a lot of drivers said, pardon?
They moved, didn't they move qualifying actually up in the day? It starts earlier now tomorrow, correct?
They started it earlier, yeah. I think they just made that announcement. I just saw that where they announced that qualifying times for tomorrow have been moved up. I don't know. I'll be up at 4 o'clock anyway to watch F1 qualifying, which I know that the Ferraris and the Red Bulls are going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, followed by the Mercedes, who are not having as strong a year as they had the past 7 years. That'll be over and done with. But they're in Spain today, so this week, so it'll be fun, beautiful scenery to go along with it over there. And it's a hoot to listen to those guys try and announce a race anyway. So, and for us to understand it. But yeah, so today was a great day. It sets up for a great tomorrow. It's a shame we aren't going to get really good weather. We don't know what the weather's going to do. It's Indiana in the summer. You know, it's not like out here in California,
right,
where it is it's 85 and sunny almost every day of the year out here, except winter. It gets down to 75 and sunny, and we haven't had rain in 5 months out here. So
well, and I can tell you what the weather's looking like tomorrow, Steve. Is according to what is this WeatherBug? It's going to be 83 tomorrow. Looks like throughout the morning until about 1 o'clock, there's about a 13% chance of rain. The afternoon, it really spikes up at 1 o'clock. There's 35, and then 3 to looks like 8 p.m. You're up in the 80% chances of rain and thunderstorms. So, you know, that looks like it might be a good call to move that up in the day to get that.
What did they move it to? Do you have the times here they moved it to?
I didn't. I just kind of briefly skimmed over that before the show.
Yeah, I skimmed over it too as I was looking for some other things. Yeah.
And I'm not real sure what time it's going to be tomorrow. So, you know, unfortunately, right now I can't provide that. I can try to maybe look it up for those that are watching. But Steve, I kind of want to hit. We talked about betting odds with Indy and F1 a little bit, and even NASCAR.
Okay.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that if you want to have some fun with betting, bet on IndyCar. Now, when I say have some fun, my idea of having fun with betting is placing a $10 or $15 wager on individual drivers. And of course, we don't have right now the odds as they're going to sit during the race. But, you know, like if you go to DraftKings right now, Scott Dixon is at plus 700 odds to win. He's the favorite according to DraftKings right now. Now, how they come up with that when they haven't seen qualifying, you know, and looked at practice, I don't know what the compilers are looking at when they come up with those plus 700 odds for Scott Dixon.
Can I tell you something I think go into it?
What?
I think the fact that Scott's won this race before, he is probably one of the top drivers in the sport. He's a wily old veteran. His car is fast. He finished the day 5th with a top speed of 231, 530, and finished well in the top 10 and 4-lap average speed. So he's dangerous. A lot of these guys will the magnitude of qualifying at Indy, and the other thing is and this has always been said by the drivers, is kind of a optical illusion, is that when that track fills up, when people start sitting in the infield stands, okay, in the pits, and they usually fill the front straightaway in turns 1 and 2 for qualifying, I went to the track when qualifying was sold out. I mean, it was as full as it is for race day, the first day of qualifying. Because always at the end of the first day, whoever was fast at the end of the first day got the pole. So the pole race was always done in the old days, the traditional days, on the very first day. So if you were AJ Foyt, you were sitting with the fastest speed on Monday or at 6 o'clock on the Saturday, you were the pole winner for that day for the Indy 500, and then the rest of them were just filling the other 32 spots. So there's a lot to be said. But what they tell you is when people start filling the stands, that track gets a little bit more narrow, and it's not a very wide track to begin with. In racing standards of tracks how they're built today, most of the tracks built today are built much wider than Indianapolis is. So to think that they can get 3 cars, that's why they can never do 3 abreast for NASCAR. The first time they tried to run the Brickyard 400 there, Holman's wanted to keep tradition up there and try to do a 3 abreast. Start with the NASCAR boys, but it wouldn't work. Those cars were just too wide. They never would have made it through turn 1, because their grip levels are much different. And you don't get a lot of marbling or a lot of grip rubber holding onto the track. Firestone builds a much more tougher compound tire. The Indy 500 has been diamond cut, which I don't know if you know what that means. It means that it keeps grip, but it also chews up tires a little faster. So you get a lot more marbling than you do rubber laid down on a track that's a smoother surface. You don't want to get anywhere near the marbles because that's like walking on marbles. But back to what you were saying. So a guy like Scott Dixon can handle that, but go back to setting the odds.
So real quick though, just to clarify, I believe the original start time for qualifying tomorrow was supposed to start at 1 Eastern time. Is that correct? Yeah. They have moved that back to 11 a.m. So the start of qualifying will be at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And I think that is on Peacock, like you said earlier. But getting back to the odds, you look at a guy like Scott Dixon plus 700. I think Jimmy Johnson right now is at plus 1,800, or what was he, plus 18? Yeah, he's at plus 1,800. And I kind of said this, I think last week, Steve, when I did the short video for my top 5 best bets for NASCAR going into the Kansas race, I kind of tried to explain that, Steve, in most sports, the plus odds, when you're looking at a sports team, the favorite is always, minus odds. The underdog is at plus odds. When you look at a race or a typical race, whether you're going to bet on dirt, NASCAR, IndyCar, every driver in that is at plus odds. So every driver, because of, like you said earlier, because of the factors in the race, when you're dealing with engines, you're dealing with rookie drivers or other drivers, you're dealing with terrible track conditions, that everybody is the underdog. Now, the favorite is a little bit less of an underdog to win that race than say a Jimmy Johnson going into this at plus 1,800. But the one thing I will say, just like the All-Star race in NASCAR coming up this weekend with all the gimmicks in that race, it's anybody's race. Like a Michael McDowell, like we talked, is at plus 50,000 odds for that race. Now, and I know we're not talking about NASCAR, but when you're talking about a track that's 2.5 miles, which is Indy's 2.5 miles, right?
Yes.
Correct, Steve? Okay.
Yes.
And you're talking about 33 cars and cars moving this fast. Everybody's going to be an underdog. But what that gives you is the ability to bet $10, $15 on these drivers, your favorite driver that you could throw out. Like I'll be betting on Jimmy Johnson for the Indy 500 because I wasn't a huge fan of him when he was in NASCAR, but I am a huge fan of NASCAR, and I'm going to bet on the NASCAR guy, and I'm going to root for the NASCAR guy in the Indy 500 this week. So I think, what it does is it gives you the ability to, bet on a plus 700, Scott Dixon at plus 700, you bet $10 on him and he happens to win the race. You just turn that $10 into an $80 payout. You get $70 for the win and your $10 back. So, that is, pays out pretty well if you want to have fun with betting on racing. And that's why, I kind of steer away. I mean, I do bet on football, but I really have fun betting on auto racing and motorsports in general, because the odds allow you not to spend much money. The risk of the money that you're putting out versus the reward of money that you're getting in really makes it a fun time. I mean, if you go and you bet, if I decide to bet $200 on my Bengals to beat the spread one weekend, that's $200 I'm putting up. That's maybe going to pay out, another $200. So the risk of that and the reward doesn't really benefit me, in my opinion, with the money that I make. But if I can take 5 drivers in a typical auto race like the Indy 500 and say I'm going to put 10 on him, 10 on him, 10 on him, because they have a shot to win, and I happen to hit somebody with plus 1,800 odds, and I get $190 payout for that, that's a good day for me. And in fact, it happened a couple weeks ago for me with Chase Elliott in the NASCAR race, like I told you. So
stole my driver.
Yeah,
stole my
I did.
driver.
That's right. And I'm going to steal your driver this week in the All-Star race because I'm going to bet on Kurt Busch. So because he's at plus 2,500 for that race.
There you go.
Yeah, I think you really did hit the nail on the head when you talked about, just have fun betting on this race. Watch what we do in qualifying here. Watch what they do in qualifying. Watch what they do in their limited practice. Now, you were telling me about the limited practice next week, right, Steve? And
yes,
that
what they'll do
they
is
don't really get out.
They're going to let you go out. They're going to let you practice on Monday. Okay, they are going to let you go out Monday and what they want you to do is to get your car set up in your race configuration. They realize that unlike NASCAR and F1, your cars in F1 and NASCAR, your cars are locked down. You're not allowed to. And NASCAR used to be the way of Indy, where you could put your qualifying motor in, then you went in and you put your race motor in. If you remember those days. And you could do all that in NASCAR. Then NASCAR went to the one engine rule. F1's always been. F1 only allows you 4 power plants for the entire season. So that's why they tell Honda, Ferrari, and BMW, everybody, Aston Martin, everybody that makes engines, you better make these things durable and last, and not just you're not putting a new engine in these cars every week. You get 4 engines, and when you put a new engine in, you get a power plant penalty for putting it in. If you put it in out of sequence, or they give you time frames where you can change your engines without penalty. But occasionally they break up and they blow up, and you got to do it. But anyway, you can go in, you set your car up for qualifying right now. That's what they were all working on today. That's why you're seeing speeds you probably won't see in the race. You may see the first lap, first 5, 10, 15 laps when somebody's sailing, whoever gets the pole. Generally, that driver starts out and he gets clear and free of everybody, all the turbulence and everything like that. And he sails for about 10 or 15 laps. And then really these cars are only good on fuel for about 20 laps anyway, 20, 25 laps. Indy requires about 6 or 7 pit stops for the race. Where NASCAR, a lot of times you get by on F1's a two stop race.
Right.
You can't put fuel in anyway. You can only change tires. You cannot refuel in F1. NASCAR is generally a 3 to 5 stop, depending on how hard you're running and how few cautions they are. But anyway, back to Indy. What makes Indy fun and difficult is that this is the only race left right now, other than next weekend when NASCAR will run the Coca-Cola 600.
Mm-hmm.
This is the longest, most highest speed run race of any form of auto racing there is. You have to realize F1 runs a time limit, 90 minutes. Okay. And that usually equates to they run about a 2.5, 3 mile track, 3.5 mile road course. Yeah, hour and a half for an hour and a half. They time the 90 minutes should be sufficient enough to get the race in. 95% of the time, 96% of the time, they get the race in. Okay. So you're not putting as much stress on those engines because you're going through turns 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. We're going to Monaco in a couple of weeks. Where's a couple of hairpins there? They're going through those hairpins at 30 miles an hour. Indy, you are running full throttle at about 12 to 13,000 RPMs all the way around for 500 miles, 3 hours. You're not lifting your foot if your car's working right, you're out front. That puts so much stress on those engines and the rest of the parts of that car. The likelihood that things start to break is just natural,
Right.
more natural than in any other sport, any other form of racing that there is. Now, drag racing, they have the problems, but those engines are built to blow up. They're built to
Steve,
run at red line all the way down the track, and then they blow up. So, you're running at full power. You're running at full RPM. You are stressing those engines. So you can have Scott Dixon out front sailing. I mean, he's just sailing. And everybody's like, this is Scott Dixon's day. Lap and a half to go. Dixon starts slowing down. Some 98-cent part broke on the car, and he's dead. He's done for the day. That's the way IndyCar racing is. That's what makes the Indy 500 so much fun. That I can't tell you the number of times in Ireland we used to bet the 10 by 10 squares. You know, you go to a party to watch the race, and you put your name on it. You buy squares. You buy, $5 a square, $10 a square, whatever they want to charge you. You buy your squares, put your name in it, and then you draw the cards, put them down one side, and things like that. And how they came up with it, I don't know, but you bet that way. And you'd be sitting there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to win this. I'm going to win this quarter. Or I'm going to win this lap segment." And boom, your driver's in the lead. Blows. And it's not tires that go. It's rarely ever tires that blow up on the Indy cars. It's the damn motors. So it makes gambling real fun, elative, or very sad because you had the best car. Boom, it didn't matter.
Yeah, and you know what, Steve? If you want to bet on any of these races and you want to do a little bit more than squares and you're not real familiar how to bet on racing, you can head on over to betting.net, right? And they will
I know how to bet. I know how to bet Indy. I know how to bet Indy cars. But
betting.net will compare the best online casinos and sportsbooks that's right for you and let you know what is the best online casino or sportsbook for you in the state that you live in. But Steve, I want to kind of touch on what you said about this is a long race. I think actually Talladega is only 499 miles, if I'm not mistaken. And when they run out there, they run 499 miles. Less NASCAR goes into overtime, but that's a whole other sport. But I think maybe when you look at race fans like me and you, and we're really into watching auto racing, F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, dirt racing. I think a lot of times fans that are huge fans of the sport understand that going out and racing sometimes isn't just going out there and driving that car around the track as fast as you can. You have to take care of your equipment, and you have to understand how fast that track that you're currently racing on that week is degrading your equipment. And sometimes, a race turns into the survival of the fittest. How many times have we seen in NASCAR from week to week where they get to a track and it just eats up the tires and the driver that figures out how to run more quality laps on tires that are getting eaten up usually puts themselves in a position to win the race. IndyCar's the same way. Yeah, you could go out, you could run these cars at 234 miles an hour, and you could try to do that for 500 miles, but most probably your car's probably going to stop running on you around the 300-mile mark. So they need to understand where to take those brakes on the track, what line to run that is not eating up their tires. It is not bouncing their car around every time they go around the track. So there is a lot that goes into auto racing that to just the casual fan that we sit there and watch it and say, man, this is a really fun sport to watch, that we're not seeing and we don't understand because we're not down in the pits. We're not seeing the wear on the cars after, 70 laps, 80 laps and on the tires. So, I think that you bring up a good point, and I just kind of wanted to highlight that, watch out for that too. Watch out when you're looking at qualifying and practice, watch who's running those consistent laps, because that tells me that those drivers are finding the groove and they understand where they want to run on the track. So, and you can see that in NASCAR a lot of times. F1, I really can't from week to week. I really just think F1's about the best equipment, in my opinion. But so I'm not going to dive into that. But, if you want to look and kind of evaluate the drivers for yourself, look at who's running these laps consistently and who has run them consistently in practice and tomorrow in qualifying. And that'll tell me who I think is set up and feels comfortable running this track. What do you think, Steve?
I think you're spot on. I think you've hit the mark right on the head. And I'll tell you, I've had the privilege, luckily, because I am retired, I've gotten to watch practice all week. So I'm going to give you Steve's picks for pole and for who to bet on.
Let's
in the
hear
race.
I'm excited to hear these.
Okay. For the pole, I would consider these drivers. I would consider Alexander Rossi. When he got his car dialed in, he went right to the top of the speed charts. He's won the 100th running of this race 5 years back, and he's a very capable IndyCar driver. Drives well on this track. Generally, Andretti's cars seem to follow the mentorship of Andretti himself, where his cars seem to always last about 498 miles, and it's plagued the Andretti name just more than it's plagued anybody else. But he looked strong in practice all week. Scott Dixon, he looks strong. He's in a Chip Ganassi car. Ganassi runs great. He always builds great equipment. He's the second most winningest owner in IndyCar, second only to Penske. So he was somebody I would pick. Tell you what, I liked Tony Kanaan. He is a track favorite. Now, that doesn't mean anything, but, he's in a Honda, and he's got a capable team. He's coming. He's a one-off driver, but if anybody he guts it out. He's a gutty driver. He'll stay with his car. He'll nurse his car properly. Now, you have to remember, in IndyCar, they don't have drafts per se. Like NASCAR does it, because the cars aren't as big, and they don't disturb the air nearly as much because they're much more streamlined. But what you get in IndyCar, you get what's called a tow. Now, there's a difference between a draft and a tow. A draft just creates a hollow space of air right behind another car and allows you to back off your throttle, run your car at about 3/4 of the power, and maintain pace with the car in front of you, because the car in front of you is breaking air for you, and your wind resistance on a big, heavy 4,000 pound NASCAR is much greater than it is on an Indy car, which sits more like maybe 24, 26, 28 inches off the ground. I mean, total height of the car, not off the ground per se. And you've got wings that are diffusing air all throughout the car. So, and all of a sudden you're creating a turbulence, but you're also creating a tow. If you get in the right spot, it's actually the Indy cars are sucking that. It's like a jet wash. It's actually sucking the wind back to it and pushing the lead car, but you also get pulled, and it's called a tow. So if you'll hear him talking in the race, you'll see a driver, he's sitting in the tow. He's actually running faster at lower RPMs than the lead car. Okay? And so NASCAR calls it a draft because it works a little differently. IndyCar calls it a tow because it works a little. Kanaan is somebody who's an expert at running and finding the tow and getting behind somebody who's running fast in front of him and just sitting there, letting his engine cool down a little bit, popping out and cooling it down, and not stressing his engine nearly as much so he can be around for the end. Willpower is always dangerous. He's been on top of the speed charts, topped the 231 today. He's a savvy driver who's won this race and done well with it. Alex Palou has kind of dominated IndyCar for the last 2 years. He's been, I think he's a defending champ. He's somebody to watch for. That can, and he topped 231. Somebody I like, who won he did not win, but runs strong at Indy, Connor Daley. His dad is Derek Daley of F1 and IndyCar racing fame from years ago. It's a second generation driver, runs well. Elio Castroneves, 4-time winner, looking to become the first 5-time winner. He's with a newer team, but that team has got their stuff together. They put together a winning car last year.
He's calling this the drive for 5.
Drive for 5 for him. He's won back-to-back before in 2001, 2002. You never count Elio out. He doesn't have to have the fastest car. Elio's a guy, if his equipment holds up for him, he's going to be there in the end. Another dangerous guy to win the pole is Ed Carpenter. Ed is a front row runner all the time. He only drives the ovals now. He owns the team. He only drives the ovals. But I don't see him with equipment strong enough to win the race, but I see him strong enough to win the pole. So you've got race winners, pole winners. I think it's going to come down to Takuma Sato, Rossi, Dixon, Kanaan, Will Power, and Neves never runs strong. Ed Carpenter will be in there. And there's one more driver I'm looking for here. Hang on. Joseph Newgarden will be strong for a pole run. It's a Penske car. He'll be up there. He posted a 2:31 today. Good time. Jimmy Johnson, I think he'll get overwhelmed a little bit by it all. So I don't see him up there. Other than that, I think those are the guys, if you want to bet, look them up. The driver that won the Grand Prix race and won, I think he won the Long Beach Grand Prix as well. Colton Herder. His dad is Brian Herder. Who they run. Colton actually lives about 25 minutes north of me, up in Santa Clarita. I see him whizzing down the 405, doing 160 miles an hour all the time.
You do not, because you can't drive 160 miles an hour on the 405, because I've seen pictures, Steve. It's a parking lot.
There's parts of it you can at certain times of the day, but not much, trust me. So those are the guys that I think that I've mentioned. And if I talk too fast, you can always replay this and slow it down. But if I was going to bet on the pole tomorrow, I think that I would probably look at either Takuma Sato or Alexander Rossi to win the pole. I think both those guys will be on the front row. So if you're looking for, a trifecta to pick the front row, first you got to go watch Mike's half-hour show on what a trifecta is.
Leave Mike alone.
Because we all, it's really tough to know that a trifecta means picking 1, 2, and 3 position. So now there's two forms of trifecta. There's a trifecta where you pick them in order, and there's something else, a different name for the trifecta, where you just pick top 3 drivers in. So, go to betting.net. They will tell you all this stuff, and they will tell you what the best way to bet your money is. Don't listen to me, because I am not a gambler. I am not Kenny Rogers on a train bound to nowhere. Head out. I can't remember the song right now.
I am
it's Indy 500. This is the
I am a little bit of a gambler, but Steve, but before you go bagging on Mike here, if you look at the comment there, I think Michael's, we were having a great show. So
the grueling truth is not Mike. That came from corporate.
Oh, well, yeah.
Mike Goodpasture puts out when it's Mike. He puts it under his name.
Okay.
So when you get a note from the grueling truth, that means corporate likes what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, so
I don't know that. I don't know that at all. It's probably Mike.
just making things up over here.
I know. Yeah. I'm embellishing and don't fact check me. Look. It's Mike. Look, it's Mike. Dumbass. It's Mike.
That's Mike.
That's Mike.
Steve, I want to know. Here's what I want to know.
What do you want to know?
You gave me a whole bunch of drivers, right?
Right.
And a whole bunch to look at. I didn't hear Juan Pablo Montoya, but I understand that you're probably worried that he's going to run into a track dryer during qualifying.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick absolutely one driver right now, give me your favorite for the pole. Just the one driver, your favorite, who the one guy that you think is going to win the pole.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what. I think it's going to be Takuma Sato.
I think that's a great pick.
I think Takuma Sato, that guy, boy, he labored in hell at this place for so many years. His daddy or somebody owns Panasonic. Somebody in his family owns Panasonic. So if you ever see his car, it's always got Panasonic on the side of it. Okay. And, he's running a Honda engine, which looks a little bit like the dominant engine this year, just slightly. It usually doesn't matter too much in IndyCar because the specs of those engines are so rigid that both Chevrolet and Honda. And then all of a sudden he's won 2 Indy 500s now, and he is a premier driver in the Indy 500 circuit. There are horses for courses, and there are drivers who don't necessarily flourish over the course of an Indy 5 or an IndyCar series all season long, but they come to Indy, and it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for some of these guys. Takuma Sato is one of these drivers. So if I was going to bet on somebody, and a lot depends on qualifying times or positioning, and let me see if I can pull that up. I had that. I had the qualifying order.
Yeah, I don't have that.
I think I do here.
Why Steve's look? Go ahead.
The order for Saturday's initial qualifying runs, which commence at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, is Pato Awards going out first. Rinus VK, Callum Elot, Rehnquist, Grosjean. Now, Roman Grosjean is another F1 driver who's done well, but I don't think he's ready to win. Jimmy Johnson goes sixth. But no name Devlin DeFrancisco. J.R. Hildebrand's a decent driver. Juan Pablo goes out 9th, so hopefully he doesn't hit.
Not raining.
Doesn't hit. Yeah, hope it's not raining, or he doesn't hit. He could even hit just one of the pickup trucks doing a track inspection.
Yeah, probably.
Takuma Sato goes 10th, and I like that because if the storms are coming, Takuma's going early in the day in the segment. The winds are only probably going to pick up as the day goes stronger if they're expecting thunderstorms.
And that's probably enough laps that the groove's probably going to have a little bit of rubber laid down on it.
Well, if any rubber lays down, yeah,
right.
You're right. But again, Indy does not lay rubber like NASCAR does.
Right.
But, the big thing here is Takuma's probably going to catch this with lighter winds than you're going to see later in the day. Followed by him is Marco Andretti. Marco's another guy. Andretti can build engines for speed. He qualifies 11th. Graham Rahal 12th. Let me just give you Kanaan 13th. That makes Kanaan very dangerous. He posted the fastest lap time today, or he posted the fastest 4-lap average today. Okay, so right now, qualifying wise, if you wanted to bet easy, bet Kanaan. If you're going to base it on today's results, but I wouldn't bet it.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I just never would do that.
Yeah,
Kanaan hasn't raced in a year. I think Tony will qualify well. He could even be a front row starter. He's more than capable of doing it, but he hasn't raced a car since Indy last year. That just means you're still a little rusty, but he is the favorite in the sense that he posted the fastest 4-lap average today in heavy winds. Then I'll just go down to some other. Colton Herder, a name we talked about, won the 16th. Scott Dixon qualifies 18th. Now I think you're getting late enough into the day. You may start seeing the winds kick up. And you really now, Helio qualifies 21st. Rossi goes 24th. That's a liability to Alexander Rossi to be going that late in the day if the weather is going to kick up. And anybody else down here, Joseph Newgart in a Penske car goes 28th. Simon Pagenaud, another winner, qualifies 30th. Will Power goes second to the last. And I like Will Power a lot, but going, 32nd out of 33 cars, it does not bode well for that because it's probably either going to be in a rain delay if we're going to get storms, or the weather's going to be crappy enough that the wind gusts at that point in the day are going to be very treacherous for him. And, he'll qualify. So now what this means is only having 33 cars in the race. There'll be no bumping. Everybody's going to make the show because you start 33 in the Indy 500. There are 33 cars, 33 drivers. And that's where we go. Unless somebody wants to, cars have to be entered by now. So
it's where it's at.
it's where it's at right now because you always would know that there are other cars entered. Usually they were called T cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the T cars were there's no T cars anymore. And so everybody will make the field. So my advice is pick a driver, find your starting lineup, your qualifying order. Takuma Sato would be my odds-on favorite. If I had to put money down on one driver, I'd go Takuma Sato.
I think those are great. I think that's
about it.
pick.
That's about all I can offer to you.
Well,
So
Steve,
sit back, relax, and have a good time. If you don't have Peacock, I tell you, it's worth getting for $4.99 a month. It's worth it because you get all the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills reruns too.
Yeah, and who
worth
wants to miss? Who wants to miss that?
And below deck sailing yacht, and you get below deck sailing yacht too. So,
Steve, I think you gave out some great information.
thank you.
It's a lot to take in. Especially if you're just a casual fan of IndyCar like I am. I do, like I said before, I do watch the races. I do know who's won this year. But I know a lot of times, when you talk about Herder, he did win he does have a race. He has 2 wins this year, correct?
Yeah, he won Long Beach and he won this Grand Prix. Now that's road courses,
right?
But still,
but it's
good equipment.
Road courses. He's got good.
His dad is a great knows this track. Go ahead.
Right, but as you know, sometimes you cannot compare. AJ Allmendinger is one of the best road course drivers in NASCAR, but he's not one of the best drivers in NASCAR. So, a lot of times, you really can't compare what they're going to do on a super speedway or what I like to call a super speedway of Indianapolis, which is not really a super speedway, but it is in a sense.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this more so than any other track in any other series. Indy is its own beast.
Right.
We talk about Talladega, but Talladega's got sister Daytona. All the F1 tracks are cut pretty similar now because a lot of them have upgraded to newer tracks, and F1 has put pretty stringent controls on how many turns they want, how long of straightaways they want. F1 stopped coming to Indy because they got afraid of the straightaway at Indy.
Right. And there's
coming out of the back of it, they actually had them circling, coming out in the short chute on the north end and or the south end, I'm sorry. And you would hit that straight and come in, you'd have the entire straightaway. And Michael Schumacher just said, I'm not ever coming back here. My car goes too fast on this track.
F1 doesn't like to go over 180.
They do not like the speed. They're a bunch of muddlecocks, let's call them, because we don't want to use negative language on this show. But they're a bunch of muddlecocks about speed. Now you go to Indy, there ain't no speed limit at Indy, and it is a beast entirely of its own. You think that track is symmetrical? Every turn drives differently. Every turn.
And that's what, if you're watching or you happen to watch this show later, one thing that you got to remember is Indy, the Brickyard, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is a rectangle. So you have the front straightaway, you have the first turn, you have another straightaway into another turn, and then the back long straightaway. So you have 4 essentially straightaways at that track. And one thing that, I've been to several Brickyard 400s, and one thing I always wanted to be able to do was go up in like a blimp and see the whole race live because, as you know, Steve, at that track, it doesn't matter where you sit, you're not seeing the whole race. And really, I think that was kind of the downfall for that race with NASCAR is NASCAR fans like to go to a track and they like to be able to see the car the whole time. And you can't do it at Indy. So if you're lucky and you're sitting in one of the turns, you get to see at best, just under 3/4 of the race. But
it's kind of the reason I stopped going to Indy because it got to be like going to a Colts game.
Right.
When we had season tickets for the Colts, we sat in 10 rows up on a 20-yard line behind the Colts bench. All right. And we had every time the ball would come down to our 20-yard line, to our red zone, the damn camera crew would come down and they're on a golf cart. They'd have this camera that would extend about 15, 20 feet up in the air. And that would be right in front of what we could see. So we couldn't even see our 20-yard line. So what I ended up watching in the Colts game was I ended up watching the damn game on the big screen. I just sat up there and just watching it. And then it got to be when Indy finally put the big screens up, the super televisions up, I just started watching the race on the big screen I'm thinking,
He said, I can do
why
this
am
at
I
all.
paying all this money to park and to drive and to eat turkey leg drumsticks, which aren't good for you, and then fight parking to go home, and then got to host a barbecue for everybody to watch the race on tape delayed and miss the World 600.
Yeah.
Forget that. I'm going home just staying home and watching the race at 7 o'clock when it comes on, listen to it on the radio, working the yard. The last 3 hours, just putting head pods on, playing golf by myself and listening to the race while I was playing golf. But then I got to see the World 600 as well. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of going to the race anymore, but I love the Indy 500. It is the greatest spectacle in auto racing. It has not changed that at all.
And it's one of the races I every year make sure that I do not miss. Steve, do you got anything to add before we wrap up the show?
Well, no, I'm telling you again, qualifying, if you want to go Steve's pick, never guarantee anything. Takuma Sato, I think, is the guy to beat for the pole tomorrow. Now, we're going to get this in under an hour, which is unusual for us. However, we can do one of two things. We can end it, or we can go do our movie reviews like we do on every other show if you want to.
No, let's end it.
You want to end it? You don't want to do movie reviews?
It's Friday night, Steve.
I got one question for you. Have you ever seen Blazing Saddles?
Of course, I've seen Blazing Saddles.
Okay, you're above half the other guys that broadcast on this station. Let's wrap it up. Let's get everybody ready to go.
So, anyway, Steve, great advice tonight. If you stayed with us during the show or you catch part of the show, I thank you for watching. If you liked our show, like and subscribe to Grueling Truth on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. You can also follow us on all the major podcasts, wherever you can find major podcasts. Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or Speaker are my preferred sites. Again, if you want, we have several other great shows here. We have an NFL draft show. You can catch Steve Risley, myself, and Ryan Peters on the weekly NASCAR show. I think, Steve, are we going to come back and do another show after qualifying on Sunday this week?
Yes, we're going to do 2 more shows. We'll do a show for post-qualifying. Then we'll do a pre-race show for Carb Day on Friday. So look for us next Monday, and look for us again on Friday. We'll let them run Carb Day, which is always a fun. That's a very fun time. The last 2 hours of time on the track where they shut it down. And did you know that the Indy 500 parade at one time was the second largest parade held in the United States?
I did not know that, Steve. You're full of information.
Second only to the Tournament of Roses parade. The Indy 500 parade was actually at one point in time bigger than the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great information. So if you liked our show, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the special editions that we're going to do on the Indy 500 here at the Grueling Truth. Again,
and one more thing, those of you that are Indianapolis 500 fans, it means a lot of you might be from Indianapolis. We are firing up the Indiana Basketball Weekly show sometime later next week, or maybe the next week, with the great news that Trace Jackson Davis has decided to pull out of the NBA draft and return to Indiana, putting Indiana in the top 10. Actually, I saw one poll today, preseason, we are ranked ahead of Kentucky right now. We are ranked number 9th in the country, and Kentucky is 10th. That's always good when we can be on top of Kentucky for anything.
Yep. Yes, it is. I've only lived in Indiana part of my life, but I know that is a great thing.
Yeah, you know what's good about, Kentucky's the only place in the United States where your family tree doesn't fork.
I've heard that.
Okay.
I don't want to get into it, though. But anyway, thanks for watching. Before we leave you, I do want to remind you that the Grueling Truth in this Indy 500 qualifying preview has been powered by Betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding an online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you in a couple days. Steve, have a good night.